I'm Mike Uyak. I love to try new things, and I've had culinary adventures all around the world as well as right at home. I've had really wonderful food, as well as some really horrible food. I'd like to share some of my adventures with you, and we'll see if I have what it takes to fix whatever goes wrong. This is Recipe Redemption. Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of Recipe Redemption. I wanted to talk today about soup dumplings, or xiao. For those of you who have yet to experience these delights, I will say that in my humble opinion, they are about as close to the perfect bite as it is that you're likely to get. The origins of the xiao are debated, but most people agree that they were created in Shanghai sometime in the mid-1800s. The most commonly referenced story is of a chef named Huang Mingxian, who owned a restaurant in Shanghai in the suburb of Nanxiang, and wanted to create a dish to surprise and delight his customers. The dumpling he created, which he called, let me see if I get this right, Nanxiang Daoro Mantou, which translates to something like big meat steamed bun from Nanxiang, which is sort of descriptive and yet not very helpful. There are dozens of steamed buns in Chinese cuisine with some sort of meat in the center. So what distinguishes this one from all the others? Soup. Mr. Huang's stroke of genius was realizing that flavorful stocks containing high concentrations of dissolved gelatin will set up into a jiggly semi-solid mass, an aspic, when cooled. If you enclose a cube of stock inside a minced pork meatball and wrap that in a well-sealed pasta square and steam it, the cube of gelatinized stock will melt and fill the dumpling with soup. Needless to say, the dish went what we might today describe as viral, with folks flocking from far and wide to try the new taste sensation. The name didn't stick, though, and it was redubbed xiaolongbao, or little basket buns, literally translated. Its fame didn't make its way outside of China itself for nearly 100 years, until the owner of the Taiwanese restaurant chain Din Tai Fung hired a new chef who hailed from the mainland, who happened to have memorized the recipe for xiaolongbao, and it became the signature dish of that restaurant. As the chain expanded internationally, so too did the legendary xiaolongbao. There is a technique for eating these, by the way, as they are traditionally served as soon as they come out of the steamer as possible. If they're not hot, the stock starts to re-gelatinize and you don't get quite the same experience. Although I can say from personal experience, the flavor is still excellent. It's just not as soupy. The bao are typically served, on a square of parchment paper, which reduces the chance they'll stick to the steamer basket, but you still have to be pretty gentle picking one up. The wrappers are just gossamer thin, and you can puncture it very, very easily. So you have to pick it up very carefully with your chopsticks, peel it away from whatever it's resting on, the parchment that it's resting on, and depositing it on your soup spoon. And it's the Chinese style, the big ceramic soup spoon. And assuming you manage this without tearing it, you nibble off the top of the bun, which is crimped exactly 18 times because in Chinese folklore, 18 is a lucky number. You nibble a little hole, and that allows you to carefully slurp the soup out of it, which is still 211.99 degrees Fahrenheit. And it gives you access to once you've drank the soup, it gives you access to the inside. You can add a drop or three of black vinegar, which is usually served on the table. yeah, and then you can pop it into your mouth and enjoy. As much as I urge caution when eating xiaolongbao, you will burn yourself. Because the smell of hundreds of xiaolongbao steaming away in the kitchen is absolutely intoxicating, and caution is almost always thrown to the wind by even the most experienced diners. Um, it is almost legendary at this point, how technically difficult it is to make these dumplings, and yet I still want to try.
Now the wrapper for xiaolongbao is a boiling water dough. So to 2 cups of flour, I have added about a cup and a half of boiling water, and spending some time actually mixing, kneading for about 5 minutes by hand and letting rest. Here's the cooled braising liquid from a pork shoulder that I did, which is going to be used in conjunction with my meat filling here to fill our xiaolongbao. I have a couple of eggs in there, along with some ground pork, garlic powder, onion powder, kosher salt, black pepper, Chinese 5-spice, and some dried parsley. To this I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of dark soy sauce, and probably about, we'll call it a tablespoon worth of rice wine vinegar, and then some. And I'm just going to use my hands to mix this up until it's more or less homogeneous. This will take a few minutes, but it needs to be done. Now, I'm going to flour my work surface because this first iteration of the boiling water dough was a little stickier than I wanted. I think I had a little too much moisture, and so it's sticky and lumpy and generally not pleasing, but after a couple more minutes of kneading, it became a little smoother and a little bit more manageable. And for this first test, I'm just pinching off about roughly ping pong ball size balls of the dough, and using my mini rolling pin slash muddler for my bar kit, I'm going to try, well, basically I try all the different techniques I've seen for rolling and or flattening out a xiaolongbao wrapper. It's very, very awkward, but I haven't made a whole bunch of these, so I'm going to use that as an excuse. Now, this is actually a little larger than I want, but for this first set, I'm not going to be too picky about how big it is. So there's just a spoonful of my meat mixture and a bit of the gelatinized pork stock, which, remember, is going to melt once it steams and fill the dumpling with soup. And then I'm working my way around the wrapper, trying to crimp it. I apologize now for the production quality. I didn't think about where the camera was aimed in relation to where I was working, so a lot of these dumplings are actually going to be made just off camera. This is what happens when you don't have a producer or a director. Now, those ended up kind of ugly, so just as insurance, I've got some store-bought gyoza wrappers. And going through the same process, I figure if the only problem with this application is the dough, because I don't know what I'm doing with making dough, then maybe professionally made wrappers will work. As it turns out, they're a little different. They're a little drier and a little stiffer, so they don't want to crimp in quite the right way, so they don't look the same as an actual xiaolongbao. But nonetheless, I put them on little pieces of parchment paper on a steamer rack and threw them into a steamer for about 10 minutes.
So I won't subject you to the indignity of watching me try to eat these things on camera. Not perfect. I think I need a little work. Okay, I need a lot of work on my technique with dough making. It's very doughy. It's very, I think I may not have steamed it long enough, but also it has a certain additional chew to it that I don't experience with the professionally made xiaolongbao. And obviously, this is the first time that I've tried to make xiaolongbao. This is, I think, only the third time that I've tried to make boiling water dough. Previous attempts were not any more successful than this, so yeah, okay. I may not have improved, but at least I think I didn't do any worse than the last time. But it still needs a little work. Flavor wise, I think I need to up the oomph of the stock that I have, and that's the other problem with the dough is half of the dumplings leaked, so did not actually have any soup in them by the time I was done. Time to try some other things, but in the meantime, I have some other ideas.
To start with, technology. I'm going to use a stand mixer this time, and I'm going to add less boiling water. It's a total of about a cup of boiling water to 2 cups of all-purpose flour. And I'm actually adding a little bit of salt, and I ended up adding about a teaspoon of sesame oil to this, just to kind of give it a little more flavor, and also the oil is going to help it be stretchy. And automatically after, well, kneading it for 10 minutes, and then leaving it to rest wrapped in plastic wrap for about another 20 minutes. This is what we have, and it's sticky but not too sticky, and I'm just going to portion this out into quarters so I can work with it and hopefully get a little bit more uniform measurement. Boy, I need a haircut. Anyway, by rolling this out and or stretching and tugging this out into a snake approximately an inch in diameter. I'm trying to get this more or less even all the way along the length, even though I ended up having it taper at the ends like you do, so that I can cut this into more or less equal portions. About 6 dumpling wrappers will come out of this quarter. As before, I'm rolling these out with my muddler/rolling pin. You'll notice these are a little bit smaller. That's okay, because I'm going to be stretching them out to make them as thin as possible. This is some chicken stock that I put in this oblong pan so that I can cut them more or less into cubes. More or less, I say, because it's still pretty floppy. They're not really, really firm as far as gelatin goes, but now in these xiaolongbao, I'm trying something a little different. I have some cooked chicken breast, some mixed vegetables, just a few because this is quite small, and a couple cubes, okay, maybe a couple more, of my chicken stock. Did anything come off that spoon? Well, anyway, the principle is the same, and there's a chance, oh, no, we're drifting off camera, but, well, you get the idea of what I'm doing here. Basically working my way around, crimping. Classically, if you want to call it classic, you're supposed to have 18 crimps on this. Again, 18 is a lucky number. I don't think I got there, but this isn't a very good xiaolongbao anyway, so, but it works. Basically, you're just pinching it sealed. For my next experiment, I have, yes, canned Italian wedding soup. And this did not set up as a gelatin, but I put it in these ice cube tray and froze it and put it in a xiaolongbao. And here's how they look coming out of the steamer. Not pretty, but it worked.
Dough was a little better. It's a little weird having noodles inside of a dumpling, but the concept is sound. I just need to work on the dumpling itself. But it occurs to me there are other ways of making a soup dumpling besides the xiaolongbao. I think it's called a lu xiaobao, which is essentially the same idea as making a soup dumpling, but you make the wrapper a little thicker, which benefits me because apparently I can't roll it out thin enough to really get that nice thin layer like you're supposed to have. If you roll it out a little bit thicker, like I'm doing, crimp it up in more or less the same way, and pan fry it. I believe it's called lu xiaobao. My sources kind of differ, but I think that's what it's called. But it gives me an idea, because by pan frying it, you get that nice crispy bottom. It's kind of almost pot sticker in the way that you treat it. You pan fry it, and then you dump a bunch of water and cover it and steam the top, so the top dough actually gets cooked. Um, and then you get this nice crispy toasty bottom with a nice fluffy top and soup in the middle. And I thought, well, if you have a nice crusty toasty bottom and soup in the middle, if you add a little bit of cheese and it happens to be tomato soup, then you have grilled cheese and tomato soup dumplings.
Now again, because the tomato soup is not gelatinized, I put it in this round ice cube tray and froze it along with a pinch of shredded cheddar cheese. The dough itself is about the same. I tried to make it dry as I could so that it would be stretchy and not too sticky. Procedure's the same. This one's kind of ugly, but it's the one that actually ended up on camera. And what I ended up doing is actually pan frying these on both sides.
Needed more cheese. As you can see from the video, I ended up actually toasting both sides. I tried it once just with kind of the pot sticker treatment with steaming it once it was browned on the bottom, and it just wasn't quite as satisfying. Yes, you do get kind of the crispy brown bottom, but it seemed like a little bit better if it was flipped over and browned on the top. Because I still have an issue with ensuring that the top is entirely sealed, flipping them over meant sometimes that some of them leaked all the soup out. And so, yeah. Also, the amount of cheese that I actually used was insufficient. It was undetectable in the finished dish. And so it's not really a grilled cheese and tomato soup dumpling if you can't taste the cheese. Part of me is actually even tempted at some point to just do the tomato soup in the dumpling, and then when you're just about ready, when you're I might try steaming it, or I don't know, maybe flipping it. But if I do the steaming in particular, right before you dump in the water, dump in a coating of cheese over the top of all the dumplings, then dump in the water, cover, let the cheese melt, and get down onto the bottom. And by the time you lift the lid and let the excess moisture evaporate off, now you've got this layer, including this kind of a fried cheese layer on the bottom that sort of sticks all the dumplings together. And it sort of becomes kind of like pull apart monkey bread dumplings. That might actually do to have enough cheese there without actually trying to stuff enough cheese into the dumplings themselves. Some experimentation may be necessary, but this kind of got me to thinking about, well, first, how do I wrap up this video? But also, what's the logical extreme? Where can we take this concept? And I think I know how.
Obviously, gotta start with a filling. Got some ground pork here, to which I am adding an egg, some chopped garlic, a little bit of dried chive, healthy addition of some freshly cracked black pepper, probably about, let's call it a teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice, a couple tablespoons worth of dried parsley, let's call it a couple tablespoons of dark soy and a tablespoon of rice wine vinegar, and about a tablespoon's worth of sesame oil. And then using my hands to combine and just move that around until it's all well mixed together. Next in, I'm sorry I forgot to zoom in for this, but got some store-bought gyoza wrappers, or wonton wrappers, either way. Use a little water to help seal them. Actually making this into a wonton, so making sure to press those edges nice and tight and burp any air out that you can. then I'm taking the corners, wrapping them in towards each other, and pressing them together really well so you get this little sort of nurse's hat shape. And I've got my wonton. I'm going to drop them into some chicken stock to boil for about 10 minutes. Now hold on, you say, I thought this was a video about xiaolongbao. Oh, it is. So I'm going to make my dough the same way, a couple cups of all-purpose flour, a cup of boiling water, mix and knead for about 10 minutes, and rest for about 20 minutes. And I took a half of that ball and rolled it out here, and then stretched it out just like all the other ones. And because this is so large, I'm leaving it a little thicker, just because I'm going to have to pick this whole thing up later. So it's about, I'm going to say it's about 10-12 inches in diameter. I don't know, I'm not very good at estimating sizes, but you can see what I'm doing here with my wontons. Oh, by the way, the stock that I boiled them in, this is the next day, by the way, just in case you didn't know. The stock that I boiled it in, I let it cool and congeal again, and I had actually added a little bit of just powdered gelatin to it to make sure that it actually set up. This is kind of jiggly, and I'm going to get more than 18 pleats on this because this thing is huge, but that's okay. So I'm just working around the first sort of go around of this dumpling to make a little sort of dough volcano out of this. And now I'm going to stuff it with my gelatinized stock mixture. And I want a good bit in there. That's one of the complaints I had about some of my earlier attempts, is I didn't actually get much soup in it. Now I'm not sure what the secret is to that. That would take a little more tinkering, but I'm going to make sure I have plenty of soup in this one. Now once I have all that stock stuffed in there, I start crimping again. Basically work my way around, making that hole smaller and smaller until there's just a small vent hole in the top of the dumpling. And we're still going to call this a dumpling. Now it is so large that it is difficult to pick up without, potentially tearing it. So I'm using my bench scraper here as a sort of spatula to kind of help transfer it in as short a space as possible onto this piece of parchment paper, and then that goes into my steamer basket to be steamed for about 15 minutes.
And so, I present to you the Uber dumpling, the bao, the super xiaolongbao, whatever you want to call it. It is a wonton soup dumpling. Or sort of. It's not exactly a success. The side of the dumpling tore while I was pulling it out of the steamer, and so it leaked all the soup out. I don't know if you can see that on camera without me dumping it all over the table and my lap. We're not going to do that. But, okay. So this is undeniably, undisputably, unquestionably stupid. I'm not 100% sure how one is supposed to actually eat this. Let's taste the broth. That is wonton soup. Let's see if I can dig in. I mean, I know I make a decent workman's wonton soup. There we go. Kind of birth the wonton here. Oops. Tore it a little bit too, but lovely shot of my forehead, I know, but that's an excellent wonton. Generally, these really large xiaolongbao, when they serve them, they give you a straw so that you can drink up the soup first and then enjoy the dumpling. I actually don't have any straws. I never use them, so I never keep them around. But be that as it may, it wouldn't have been all that useful here because the soup is already spilled out. But luckily, I had a bowl standing by, so I could dump it into a bowl. Um, this is just the sort of logical extreme to the idea behind the xiaolongbao. Putting any kind of soup into a dumpling. It's kind of gimmicky, but at the same time, it's a different experience from just simply getting a bowl of soup. You have that pleasant chew to the dumpling wrapper, and the experience of just getting that spoonful of, oftentimes piping hot soup delivered straight to your mouth. It's a unique experience. Now, did I do it justice? No. This is sort of stage one of test kitchen sort of cooking. All of the attempts that I've made to make these different soup dumplings have been version 1.0 of all of them. They need work, and I need work. Most of the places that serve xiaolongbao have an apprenticeship. You probably make several thousand of them before you actually graduate to be doing it without supervision. Obviously, I'm going to need more work. So I think the lesson to be learned from this whole exercise is that there are certain dishes that you have to make for yourself to know what dishes you don't want to make yourself. And dim sum, and by extension xiaolongbao in particular, is definitely going to fit into that category. It's a lot of work, especially considering where I live personally. If I want xiaolongbao during normal business hours, I am about a 10-minute drive away from a place that makes decent xiaolongbao, and 15 minutes away from a place that makes purportedly very, very good xiaolongbao, and about 30 minutes away from one that makes great xiaolongbao, if you're willing to wait for a table for 45 minutes. So, and I'm a 10-minute drive away from an Asian grocery store that sells them frozen, that I can just pop into a pan and steam, or into a steamer, I should say, and steam them myself. And they are just shy of being halfway decent. And it still takes way less time than I expended making each batch of these. However, if you want a soup dumpling that's different from the standard xiaolongbao, if you want the grilled cheese and tomato soup dumpling, if you want Italian wedding soup in a dumpling for whatever reason, hell, clam chowder, I don't know, whatever, something non-standard, you probably have to learn to make it yourself. And it's going to take a little practice. As you can see, I have not, by any stretch of the imagination, mastered this technique or even really learned what it really takes to make a decent xiaolongbao. I made something that resembles a xiaolongbao, passingly, and sort of functions like a xiaolongbao, but a lot more work to be done. It says they say that you have to practice something 10,000 times to master it, and I've made 100. So, long way to go. But I think it was still a useful exercise just to see what is possible. So, what do you think? Would you like to try making xiaolongbao at home? I highly recommend that you go to a restaurant and try them for yourself. They are outstanding. When they're done right, mwah, chef's kiss, perfect. Like I said, quite possibly the closest thing you're going to get to a perfect bite. Making them yourself, it's fun. It's not necessarily as satisfying simply because you're not going to get it right on the first or 50th try. Um, and that's okay. But if perfection is what you're looking for, maybe leave it to the experts. Um, but let me know what kinds of soups you would like to try to put inside a dumpling. Leave a comment below, and as always, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and I'll see you next time here on Recipe Redemption. Thank you for watching.